My name is Bob Dalpe. I served in the United States Air Force from 1978 to 1993. I was a weather forecaster. So, when people say, do I know what the weather is? I don't anymore. So I go down to the recruiting station and in the next town from where I grew up, a town called Framingham. And the recruiting station was basically 4 offices in a building. And I'm looking at the offices, I'm going across the street going, okay, that's cool. The Marines and the Army were in the back, and I just said, yeah, that's not gonna be for me. I looked at the Navy, and they had this beautiful poster of this aircraft carrier sailing bravely. It was a Nimitz, sailing bravely in the middle of the ocean, the empty ocean. And I said, no. Okay, I said something else, but I said, no, I want my airfield to be near where women and beer when I get off of work. So I went next door to the Air Force office. That is why I joined. That's really my thought process. Weather just happened to come up. I scored, they give you a test called the ASVAB, which is basically see what you know. I scored high enough to have weather as a choice. They go, security forces guarding B-52s in North Dakota, or I'll go to weather. And so weather was a good choice for me. I'm a little chaotic by nature, and weather's chaotic, so it worked out pretty well. I ended up going into the Air Force, going to San Antonio, Texas at Lackland Air Force Base. Did a lovely 7 weeks down there at Lackland. From there I went to weather observing school in Chanute Air Force Base, Illinois. Spent 14 lovely weeks there in the middle of winter, minus 70 degree below wind chills. That was great. Learned how to observe the weather, and kind of saw a little bit of Central Illinois in its winter wonderland finest. That's why I don't live there now. From there, I went up to upstate New York to a place called Griffith Air Force Base in Rome, New York. Both Chanute and Griffith are now closed. There'll be more of that as we go along. Spent about 14 months at Griffith Air Force Base. I wanted an Air Force Base 6 hours from home, so I could go back to Boston if I wanted to, but far enough, if I really didn't want to, I didn't have to. And it was 6 hours from home. Spent 14 months there, and then I got orders to a place called Bitburg, Germany. Bitburg, Germany is also closed. It was also the only F-15 Air Force base in Europe at the time. I was stationed at Bitburg for about almost 30 months. Out of that time, I spent 6 months out of Germany. I was in Spain for a couple of months. No, actually, I was in England for a couple of months. I was in Italy for a couple of months, and then traveled around as I could. From there, I went back home. Decided I was going to get out of the service, try to see if I could make it a go back near my family. I joined the National Guard, did that for about 8 months, and they said, I should leave. So I left again. I rejoined the Air Force active duty, went down to a place called Hurlburt Field, Florida, Special Operations Wing there. I was there for about 16 months, was still as a weather observer. And at the time, you had to go to a separate school to become a weather forecaster. 6 months back in beautiful Central Illinois. Excited to go back there, wintertime. I got orders to a place called Grafenwehr, Germany. Now, for the Army types, that's a place of training, and they get mud and snow and cold and dirty. I just lived there. I didn't have to go there to train. Air Force does, when the Air Force broke away from the Army in 1947, the Air Force kept the weather, but we had to give the Army weather support. So there's a lot of Air Force weather people assigned to Army, and it's the same way now, too. I was there for 5.5 years. During that time, I traveled to Spain to do another Special Forces exercise all over Europe, happened to be during Chernobyl. So we were forecasting for people all over the place, and I can't say where. So we were following the radiation cloud around Europe. My teammate at the time, we actually had that, we were a good team, and we actually forecasted that out to almost a month. We're still friends in spite of that. And then I also went to Turkey for about 2-3 weeks, but most of my time was spent in Germany. I mean, I would leave Grafenwehr and go to support other units, but it was mostly a stay-at-home because we were the training site. It was a tough place to forecast. There's things that happen there that don't happen in a lot of other places in the world. You have this thing called tree fog, where fog forms in the trees. Pacific Northwest has the same kind of weather. And people, it doesn't happen that way. It does. My most famous event was I was forecasting one morning and had the entire staff, the U.S. Army Europe, stuck for 5 hours, this fogwood bank would come in and out, in and out, in and out. It was not a good day. That was a 75-page review I had to write on that. You know, the service time was fun. I mean, then I ended up getting stationed here at Luke Air Force Base. I spent my last 3 years active duty at Luke Air Force Base. During that time, I deployed to Saudi Arabia, went to Riyadh for 3 months as part of right after Desert Storm. Many veterans want to know that their service mattered. Was it important? And you know, not everybody is, you know, Green Beret or SEAL jumping out of aircraft, being the, you know, doing that cool stuff that you see on, you know, the movie American Sniper and, you know, Chuck Norris and all that stuff. Most of the people do kind of a boring job. You know, nights as a weather forecaster, I sat there and I either read a book or I threw pieces of paper in the trash can for hours. There were days like that. You know, there are people doing admin work. Every job that you have out here is inside the military. You know, you're an infantry guy, you're not in the field, you might be sweeping the parking lot. You want to know that what you did is important. So you want to keep that lineage going, that what you're doing is important. You need to keep that memory alive. You need to keep that memory because a country that forgets its history forgets why it exists.